Well, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time today to get this set up. We were going to record last week, and I think it's almost better that we waited till today because of, some major announcements coming out on Friday with the governor, announcing kind of some new regulations involving phase 2 in a lot of the different counties. And so I'm really glad I've assembled what I think is a really great round table kind of a bunch of venues, up north, all the way down south. And then we have Salty's with kind of the restaurant aspect as well. So I just thought it was a bunch of good voices to kind of bring on today to do this venue roundtable. So Kellie, we'll start with you because you're kind of where I'm looking at this. I don't know how it looks for everybody else, but let's start with Kellie. Introduce yourself and tell us who you are, and then we'll go around.
Hi, I'm Kellie Blair, and I'm the manager of Historic 1625, which is a wedding and event venue in Tacoma.
And Kimi, what about you?
My name is Kimi Chadwick. I own Craven Farm, where we are also a wedding and event venue.
And Rebecca?
I'm Rebecca Venturi. I'm the director of catering here at Salty's on Alki, which is also a restaurant concept, and we have a private event space at sea level.
And Briana?
Hi, I'm Briana Nasman. I'm the new owner of Orting Manor in Orting, Pierce County.
Perfect. And so it's just, I think it's great. There's so much going on, with rules and regulations and everything. And so first off, I just kind of wanted to do a general check-in. It's, I guess it's Tuesday now today. How's everyone doing just in terms of like the news and, with, dealing with guys? How's everyone feeling right now? And Briana, we can start with you and circle back the other way.
Sure. It's definitely been an interesting time, especially just getting into business in late December. So I'm actually kind of glad in some ways that this is happening so early in my venue owner career, just because I haven't even had time to adjust to venue ownership. And so I'm like, okay, well, curveball being thrown. I'm already dealing with all the curveballs of just being in a new industry. So it's kind of okay, but definitely weird.
And Rebecca, how are you guys doing?
Well, we're actually in the process of getting things to the point where we can reopen later this at the end of the month, actually. But this week we're in the process of cleaning everything up, getting things up to speed in terms of the new guidelines that are in place. So that's what we're working on right now. But for the most part, the majority of us haven't been in the building for the whole time that this has been going on, so since March. So it's been different.
And Kimi, how are you guys holding up?
We're doing okay. We obviously haven't been able to have any weddings, just like the rest of you. Our first wedding was supposed to be in April, and it looks like now with the new guidelines coming out, hopefully our first one will be July 19th. Other than that, our first one will be about mid-August, but we were pretty well booked for the summer, so it's been an interesting ride.
And Kellie, how are you guys doing?
We're doing okay. I've still been working full time during all of this, which I think just keeping our routine has been kind of nice. But I think even with 0 events going on, I think juggling all the emotions and all the conflicts has almost made it feel like double full time. And with each announcement, I feel like it always brings kind of a big wave of emails and calls and questions and everything. So just kind of preparing with each new change and new announcement, how to adjust to it, and then go from there business wise.
Yeah, I guess, where everyone here is, and I know Kellie, we've talked a lot kind of, just offline too about, dealing with lots of different, postponements and cancellations and stuff. What has been the most challenging thing for each of you guys, just through this whole process? Is it dealing with the clients? Is it trying to get, the building up to, some semblance of safety, precautions? What is kind of the biggest takeaway from that? And we can start with Kellie and kind of circle back around.
I think the biggest challenge, we're an all indoor venue. And so we book our calendar year round. And so we're booked every weekend. And so just juggling the amount of events we have and the limited availability has been one struggle, just from our end personally. I think another one is, there's days I'm calling 10 plus clients and having these difficult conversations and just getting, mentally and emotionally kind of beat up call after call. And so I think not only having those difficult conversations with, these couples and their families about their wedding, but also just that work-life balance, I think is something in our industry we always struggle with, is finding that work-life balance. I don't think it exists, but even more so with this like added, emotional and mental load, that's been, I think, a personal challenge for me kind of outside of the office, is like, how do I not take this, emotion or feeling home that I've ruined someone's wedding, or they, think this about me or stuff like that. I think that's something I've struggled with.
Kimi, what about you?
Yeah, I can totally agree with everything that Kellie said. Just taking the time to be able to listen to our clients and kind of get the whole picture, because COVID's affected all of us, and it's all been in different ways, and from client to client, it's different. And so I have also struggled not taking all of that personally. And then as far as trying to figure out what to do with moving things, early on we had set policies in place as to how we would go about doing that. So that helped guide some of the conversations, which helped. But yeah, it's just been a lot and completely unexpected, just like for everybody else.
And Rebecca?
I mean, yeah, much of the same. I sort of, when we weren't able to access our building because of the implications that were placed on restaurants in addition. So just trying to work from home and navigate that, the emotional element as well. And you really can't, at that point when you're working from home, leave work at home when that's where you now work. I've got a toddler as well, so I am now a stay-at-home working mom. But taking the phone calls, but also learning like legal jargon that I'd never really explored before, like a force majeure. We have one in our contract, but I didn't know much about it until this happened. So just learning how to re-navigate our industry is a lot of what I was doing.
And Briana?
I mean, you ladies have pretty much said it. It's definitely, it's been hard to be the bad guy. I wish I could reschedule everyone for free to the perfect date in 2021 or 2022, but that's literally impossible. So that's been challenging. And like I have a toddler too, so that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and Kimi, you were mentioning too, I think early on we all kind of, had like whatever policy in place, or kind of like, this is what it was going to be. And then as things have just continued to go on and on, it's like, well, how, like I talked with, some photographers, and they're like, well, we were doing, all reschedules, whatever you want. And then, after a month or two, then you're like, oh no, like maybe we actually like can't do that right now. How do we like, reel that back in or whatever? Have you guys, has anyone kind of experienced that too? Just kind of having to like really change that mindset?
Yeah, I think with like each announcement, just trying to be fluid and think of timeline. But I think another thing is like each vendor type, everyone's doing it differently. And so it's hard to kind of explain, like, let's say a couple calls their caterer first or their photographer first, and they call you, and they're just expecting that you're going to do the same thing that every other vendor's doing. Mm-hmm. Then you're having like a conversation that they weren't prepared for. That's something I wish that everyone could do, everything the same. I mean, that's never going to happen, but just kind of explaining your decision process and why you're doing things and handling things the way you are. It's something I came across a lot because, so many different vendors are doing things differently.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like people were really coming to you with like a list of options or asking you about things, or how did that kind of conversation go when people were trying to figure out what to do? Maybe Kimi, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it really depended on the personality types and what they were going through personally, and then all their family input into things. So some had done research before and assumed, as a venue, I would be making the same decisions as maybe what they had read on social media, whereas it doesn't really fit with our business model to be able to do what another business is doing. Or sometimes they would expect me as a venue owner to be able to do things the way that like a photographer or a makeup person would be able to do, or a florist. But But really, when we're running a venue, you know, we still have all these costs all year long. So our decisions are really, they're based on something totally different, because we have all those costs going out continually. And it's not like, I'm also a florist, so like my flower cost, that's not coming out year round. That's just when I actually have an event. So there's that balance as well, and not quite knowing how much do you explain to your couples. Like, I want to be transparent and honest and upfront, but they don't really need to know, you know, exactly how all of a business is run. And I don't mean that in a bad way. So, yeah.
And Rebecca, you said you guys were like totally shut down, right?
Yeah, I mean, we, like, to the point where we're like cleaning dust and spider webs. I mean, like, nobody was on the property because we really just took the entire thing very seriously. We had to, because we're a restaurant first. And so there's a whole other set of implications that go on with that, you know, and we're a huge operation. So for us to even be semi-open just financially doesn't make a lot of sense. But, you know, to speak to sort of, you know, everyone's concerns about, you know, are they going to reopen? Am I going to be able to have my wedding, and postponing that sort of thing? Because we're so big, I was able to give a lot of flexibility. Where I got the most pushback was whether or not deposits were refundable for events that we weren't even sure we weren't going to be able to have. You know, if I've got a bride whose event is in late September, I'm probably not going to be able to tell you that I can refund your deposit, because I don't know if we're truly not going to be able to have your event. So it was having those conversations from a business perspective, because, you know, we do have to protect our business first. And then obviously the human element of being as understanding as possible. I mean, it's a challenge, but we've got a lot of flexibility in postponing people. So that sort of worked to our benefit.
And Briana, you know, you kind of brought in, you know, came into the venue here, and then you were thinking, you know, because we had talked a lot, you know, we did the whole sit down interview, you know, about you taking over the venue on the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast. You know, here you come in, and, you know, Kimi's talking about expenses all year, right? And you move in, and you're like, okay, when do we actually start, you know, booking stuff? I mean, what has that been like?
Oh, yeah. Well, we definitely had a bigger remodel than planned. So that, you know, that's a big expense. And then, of course, we have the same expenses year round: landscaping, mortgage, bills, utilities. None of that changes really not having weddings. So that's definitely been a bit of a struggle, just reworking my entire business plan right from the get-go, essentially, to make it work, because it's not cheap to run a venue. We're not just like charging $1 million a weekend and bringing that all in. There's a lot of expenses that go out, regardless of if we're hosting weddings or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, now that we've had this big, you know, the big announcement Friday, and, you know, we're kind of in this new, I guess, phase 2, right? King County, you know, Kellie, I guess maybe you could summarize that the best. I know that you guys, you know, with Historic, were just involved in, you know, kind of, right, we're doing the town hall on Monday to talk about everything. You know, there's still a lot of confusion going on. Do you want to speak about that, or kind of where we're at now as far as what your understanding, what the regulations are?
I think from like the biggest perspective, like just to summarize it in like easiest way, is essentially that, you know, weddings and then funerals have been looped in there as well. Can happen in like a non-religious setting. And our guidelines are essentially a combination of what's in place for religious gatherings, and then for like dining in like restaurants and taverns. So a ceremony and reception can happen, you know, on a property together. They have to happen together if you're doing both. And then just the guidelines have to be followed for, you know, religious gatherings and restaurant gatherings. So it's a huge step, just because it kind of ups the capacity, because right now in phase 2, we would be at, I think 5 people is what was originally announced for gatherings. And like for our venue, our legal capacity is just over 400. So we're now functioning at 100 capacity, which is huge. But I mean, there's obviously, you know, some restrictions and guidelines, and just trying to comb through what was announced, and, you know, that came right going into the weekend. So I didn't fully look at it until, you know, yesterday. Tried to, you know, pop a bottle of champagne, celebrate Friday, and then kind of getting through the nitty gritty of it on Monday. And so still trying to understand myself and what do we have to do in order to have a wedding? Who's responsible for what, and just kind of figuring out those things still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I guess my biggest question, and anyone that wants to take this on, but once that came about, my feeling when I heard, a lot of these, we're signing the things, we're doing the petitions, all these things, like our calendar was clear, it was clear till middle of August, right? Except for like a couple small, we have a small gathering this weekend. And so, my thought process was always like, okay, the weddings that are canceled now, right? Like they're not. So have you guys, where were you thinking about that? Or has there been like an influx now of like people calling like, oh, okay, we actually can do something in the next month? I mean, I don't know, right? That's why you guys are on. So who wants to tackle that first? Maybe raise your hand.
Oh, you can go.
We'll go Briana and then we'll go Kelly.
All right. I've definitely been booking a lot of micro weddings, like quite a lot. So that's been really helpful. And those are all under 25 guests. So regardless of if 50 is allowed, I'm still capping it at 25. Partially because of the pricing point, it needs to be that small, and partially because I feel more comfortable with, cleanliness standards if we have that small guest count. And we're mostly outdoors, so it's pretty easy for that kind of stuff to happen. But yeah, I mean, that's been great. I've had a lot of inquiries about those.
Kelly, you said you had something?
Yeah, I think, engagement season kind of goes through, Valentine's Day kind of mid-February. And I think there's a lot of couples who are engaged and just hadn't started wedding planning, and COVID kind of hit. So their wedding planning's just been on hold this time. And so we're getting a lot of inquiries of people who, have been engaged now for a few months and do want to get married this year, and they've just kind of been in limbo. So we're still seeing a lot of those inquiries of, what's your 2020 availability? Or what can we do? What does it look like holding a wedding? So we're getting a lot of those inquiries. And then also a lot of people who are like, hey, my venue is, never going to open again, or they've just shut down. There's a lot of venues who've made the decision to just kind of close the doors for a while, or, for forever. And so then you're getting all those people who are now looking for a new home. So I think there's definitely a lot of new inquiries coming to fill those dates that have already been postponed or canceled, which is, kind of refreshing to see those come through, kind of in the email inquiries.
Do you guys have, when is the first like next, not, real wedding, but like more than, 5 people or whatever? And maybe let's go around of right now, when's the next one that you guys have on the books coming up? And maybe we'll start with Rebecca.
Yeah. I think our very first one is July 19th, which they're kind of like, well, are we going to be able to do this or not? But they're still under the threshold because we're so big, and with the government's new announcement, they're going to be fine. So we're looking forward to that. But it's all of the little things between now and then that we have to kind of figure out, can we still have this event? Yeah.
Again, Kimi, what about you guys?
Yeah. Also July 19th for us. We're all trying to figure out if it makes sense to do, and they're trying to decide on their end what they're comfortable with as far as the guidelines and if that's the way they want their wedding to look or not. So that'll be our first one. If they decide not to do it, then our first one will be August 15th.
Briana, what about you guys?
August 29th is our first full weekend wedding.
First full besides kind of this. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Kelly?
August 2nd is going to be our first one. We have a couple late July who's kind of being in limbo and deciding right now. I'm assuming that they're probably going to opt to kind of postpone, but August 2nd is a go no matter what, which is exciting.
Has anyone gotten a lot of sighs of relief now from kind of these new announcements, and couples maybe that were on the fence, maybe moving into August that feel more comfortable now?
Definitely. I sent out an email to kind of our couples that were in limbo, and then August one's kind of holding hope, and just kind of said exciting news heading to the weekend. And one of our brides actually called me and she goes, oh my gosh, I could cry right now. This is just what I needed. I had the worst day ever. She goes, I'm so excited. I'm going to be able to have like the wedding that I wanted, have the people there that I wanted. And so phone calls like that just kind of make it all worth, like that positive news really just heading into my weekend was the best phone call I could have gotten on Friday.
Has anyone else noticed any sense of relief now?
Yeah. I mean, I had a significant amount of August brides that were really on the fence about whether or not they had to postpone. And I spoke to two of my couples over the weekend, and they were just like, you could hear the relief in their voices. And a lot of the questions that they were planning on asking no longer applied. So it was just like, I think a huge sort of weight lifted off of everyone's shoulders, especially those that are, we're like within the 8-week threshold of the major large weddings that are coming up. So, and of course, that's when we really have to like start nailing down all the details. So I think couples are elated. It's actually interesting that a lot of them aren't really concerned about the new guidelines having to be in place. They're just like more excited that they can just get married. So.
Yeah, it was tricky kind of, and we've talked obviously with a lot of couples about, the postponing or not. And it's, Dorothy and I talk about, I mean, we had got married at Salty's in August too. Right. And so if it was, us, I don't know what we would have done. Right. Because it's this balance between, you have this date or you have it all set, but it's not necessarily your date. Right. Until, maybe you can make a new date. I don't know. I've gone back and forth. Would you guys, did you sympathize with couples that were wanting to go, or did you just say like, hey, maybe we just should postpone to next year? I mean, where did you guys lie just on versus the business versus stress kind of area of it? Kimi?
Oh man. Like for me personally getting married or just like couples in general?
Because it was so tough. Right. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I just am kind of curious where everyone else would have fallen on that. Do you keep pushing through and holding tight, or do you just?
I would have pushed through and carried on. But we had a very large wedding, and it wasn't necessarily what my husband and I wanted. We absolutely loved our wedding; it was great. But I think I probably would have pushed through and done whatever needed to happen to get married during COVID.
Got the guest list down.
Yeah.
So I guess now that we're moving into this new phase, right, we can do weddings. I'm really curious about, the safety things and maybe other concerns that you guys as venue, people are having to focus on that, obviously it's different for any other vendor type. So, Briana, maybe we'll start with you and go around, any new, considerations, safety things, but just protocol or ideas, keeping everything clean and spread out. What are you guys looking at doing?
Yeah, well, so aside from the obvious government mandates, I personally do not want to be liable for spreading COVID to anyone. So it's super important that we're going to be like sanitizing all high touch areas, hand sanitizer before the buffet, if there's a buffet, really actually making people sure using that before they're touching stuff. So that's going to be something that we're implementing, and I'm really having to hire additional staff to make sure that everything is getting cleaned. In terms of social distancing, I don't really feel like I'm going to be 100% able to make sure no people are hugging or anything like that. So I'm kind of hoping that the hosts are going to be a little bit more on top of that. But anything that we can do to make sure things are staying clean and we're stopping the spread that way. In terms of tables are going to be spread further apart, seating less people per table. And I anticipate carrying this through 2020 and possibly 2021, depending on what the vaccine looks like at that point.
Yeah, you had commented on the questionnaire just about that, right? About making sure that, people need to be aware, right? That things are, going to probably be this new normal for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if we have a vaccine, I mean, we don't know, is that going to be 100% effective, 20% effective? It's something that we just have to adapt to, I think, as a society. And it's definitely been challenging for everyone. But I think the sooner we all just kind of accept, like, things are going to be a little bit different, the easier it'll be for everyone else to adapt. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And Rebecca, you guys are cleaning. We can hear you guys cleaning today. We were joking earlier. How is it going there? And what are you guys doing? Obviously, there's got to be stricter regulations, right, with being a restaurant and everything else.
Yeah, we're incredibly concerned about just maintaining, first and foremost, our guests' comfort level and their safety. So what we've done, and this actually started happening before we completely shut down, We've installed sanitation stations at every touch point. So there's a hand sanitizer machine right here. There's one throughout the event space. There's multiple. Before you get to the stairs, when you get to the bottom of the stairs, we are temperature checking people. In terms of the events, whether or not somebody had part of the space booked or the whole thing, we're now opening up all the walls and all the doors so that they can spread out. So if you had a 50-person wedding, you now have space for 350 people. We're pushing tables further apart. We're bringing in different PPE systems, dividers and walls and plexiglass and things like that. We're not going to be able to do buffets right away. We're just really going to have to keep everyone individual in terms of food service. Our staff will be, completely covered as much as possible in terms of their touch points, so gloves and masks. And guests are going to be, required to wear masks until they're eating or sitting at their table. And again, to your point, Briana, I don't know how much we're going to be able to keep people apart at a wedding or a celebration. But some of that's really going to be up to the host to manage their own comfort level. They know their guests better than we do and what is and isn't comfortable for them. But yeah, we're in the process of sanitizing the building right now, just getting everything clean and ready to go for everyone when they do come back.
Kimi, what about you guys?
One of the interesting things that came up for us is we've allowed self-catering before, so families would be essentially cooking off-site and then bringing it in to serve buffet style. So trying to have that conversation with couples of you're probably going to want to change your plan and go with a caterer, maybe consider doing like a gourmet box dinner of some sort, because I don't know that buffets are really going to be what you're going to want to be doing, and also encouraging the couple not to take that sort of liability on themselves, especially if the family members haven't worked in a restaurant situation and know how to handle all of those various things. So just trying to help maybe guide them in a different direction, just so that it's one less worry on their wedding day, and then trying to give good recommendations of who they could go through, and just helping them to think differently about their wedding day and be flexible. It's not going to look the way that maybe they had planned. There was something else I was thinking of as well. I think it already went out. If I think of it, I'll raise my hand.
Kellie, what about you guys?
Yeah, so we have a full-time maintenance staff member, which is nice. So the building's been, getting clean during all of this. And so we'll just be keeping it cleaned. And then from event-wise, we're just kind of looking at things and how can we control as much as we can, with setup of tables and chairs, and just looking at different components of the wedding schedule and how does that actually look with these guidelines and regulations. So just doing our part, with signage, and we were on the hunt for, sanitizer and soap and all those fun things during COVID. So just getting everything prepared and lined up, and then working closely with our partner vendors. So we don't do in-house catering, but we have a list of 5 to choose from. And so having conversations with those and just making sure we have all our bases covered and understand the rules and regulations and who's going to kind of be implementing them and who's doing what. And really just trying to understand is, okay, what do we have to do? And then what can we just encourage? I think is kind of what I need to get a better understanding of. And then I look forward to the day that we can actually have a staff meeting and kind of just be training and actually be preparing for events. We're getting one step closer to that. And so once that happens, I'll be pretty excited.
Yeah, that actually segues perfectly into my next question. And I know obviously this is going to differ from venue to venue, right? And so I want you guys to feel like you can speak, for yourself, and it's obviously not overline, but in terms of that liability, right? And like we're talking, do you require people to wear masks, the social distance? How are you guys handling that? Is that a waiver situation? Is that something that's written into something? I don't know. I mean, how? And like I said, obviously this is all individual case basis, but maybe we'll start Kellie and circle back around. But how are you guys? Or are you still kind of developing that plan?
We're still kind of developing a plan on our end. Our owner has been on vacation, so we've been kind of touching base some, but just haven't really formalized anything. But we plan on, having signage and putting stuff out in parking lots at entrance and different points in the venue, just kind of with our expectations and kind of guidelines and what we have to kind of say. And then also too, a huge concern of ours is just protecting, obviously our staff and then all the vendors and staff there. Like we want to make sure that they're all protected, and then making sure, the guests are in a nice, setting somewhere they feel comfortable. So we're going to do what we can. It hasn't really been formalized. But we have masks, hand sanitizers, so all that stuff bought ready for our staff in the venue, but we just haven't formalized kind of what we're going to do and what things look like just yet.
Kimi, what about you guys?
We will, sorry, my brain went in a couple of different spots. I'm really excited. We actually found the perfect venue manager during COVID-19. So that's been a huge blessing for us. So she's already assembled like a binder kind of guidelines and expectations for our employees, which has been really helpful. And then we can kind of refer back to that and just have a game plan moving forward. And then also doing signage throughout the venue. And I would expect our staff to wear masks throughout the day, even though our venue, most things will probably end up being outside, but we do have indoor spaces as well. But with those indoor spaces, we have huge barn doors on either side that we can open. So just having a nice pass through. And then I think Reed maybe had said something about liability stuff. We do have a COVID-19 waiver and release of liability form that we're having our couples sign. And that's kind of been a challenging one for some couples, just because this is just all new to everybody. And we're all filling it out, how things are going to proceed. So just trying to walk through that with them and help them feel comfortable, knowing that, yes, it does in the form say that we could cancel the wedding if we see too many interactions or whatnot, but also trying to let them know, we're not just going to immediately shut things down because you hugged your mom. If we see things need to be kind of addressed and hey, we need to be following the guidelines for everybody's safety, we'll politely and kindly go and tell people that, and kind of relating that back to if you have a guest that's drinking too much, you do need to cut that person off, or encourage them to stop, whatever you need to do, because that liability does go somewhere. So just trying to walk through those steps with our couples has been interesting, and trying to sympathize and just bring it out of that legal jargon into applicable situations.
Rebecca, what about you guys?
I don't know who wrote our original contract, but they were really intelligent. I think we had attorneys do it, but there's actually a clause in our contract that talks about safety precautions during a pandemic. So our couples have already taken their life away in agreement to that, whether or not they understand that jargon or not. But essentially the couple is responsible for their guest behavior. And like you were saying, what you had mentioned a little bit about, politely reminding them what they've agreed to, and that we do have the right to shut the wedding down if they're not following the guidelines. All of our guidelines will be posted in accordance with the CDC recommendations. And we just expect that people are going to adhere to them. And we'll have a conversation with guests as they're arriving, because everyone's going to, for a while at least, they'll be temperature checked when they come into the building. So we have the opportunity to give them our disclaimer when they come through the doors.
Mm-hmm. And Briana?
Real quick question for Rebecca. Have you had pushback on the temperature checks?
Not yet. I mean, obviously we're not quite open to the public yet, but when we've been explaining that to our couples as they sort of navigate, well, what's my wedding going to look like and what protocols are in place now, I haven't had one person say that they weren't okay with us doing that. Not at all. I think people are more, they just want to adhere to the guidelines so they can get on with it,
Yeah. We are still very much workshopping, but there will definitely be an additional clause to our contract for COVID. I love the idea of temperature checking. That was something that I wanted to do initially, but I just thought there would be so much pushback and it'd be really hard to organize. I might relook into that. I like the idea partially just because safety, and also I think it helps people. You're getting checked, and everyone in there doesn't have a fever. You're going to feel a little bit more comfortable, like at the wedding in general. I mean, personally, if I was a guest right now, I would be pretty uncomfortable. I think we're doing a clause. We're going to be doing what we can, and hoping that people are going to be adhering to guidelines. Similar boat as Kimi, where we will have in our contract that if rules are being blatantly ignored, we do have the right to shut down the wedding, but that's not at all our intention.
Yeah, it's really tough. We have a DJ roundtable coming up on Thursday. This will be after, whatever after this is posted. But I had asked one of the DJs to be a part of it, and they had said they did not feel comfortable because in other areas where things are open now, and they know DJs that aren't telling people, aren't kind of not enforcing, but not. It puts you in that tricky situation, and they didn't feel like they would be a positive voice about that. And so it is really tough because it puts, all vendors, but especially you guys kind of, because it's, it's like a party at your house, right? Except, it's obviously a business and whatever. So I'm really curious about that because you guys really are kind of the forefront of that. Kellie, you look like you had a thought.
I've been like out and about in public some. Like I went over to Eastern Washington when we were still in phase 1 to celebrate. I didn't want to do a quarantine birthday. I was like, I just need to be social. So I went out, and it's just interesting to me to kind of see the level of different restaurants or different businesses and what they're doing in. And it's like the level of like, you would not know there's a pandemic going on when you walk into a place, to the like 5 people per table. You don't move. Like, we nicely got asked to leave from a place because we had like talked to another table, and they're like, sorry, we're going to have to ask you to leave. And I just kind of was like, whoa, okay. All right. Like, sorry. So it's just interesting how I see the spectrum. And I think just kind of how we'll kind of take control is, I kind of view it as like people who are like, go out to their car to drink or drink in one of our, changing suites, like underage drinking, self-serving is, there's only so much you can control and encourage. But I mean, we all know the rules. We all know what's going on. We're going to do the best we can to encourage it, and then not overly police it. But when it becomes an issue and it's a real concern, and not only impacts the event significantly, but the safety of, employees and the guests, is then when we kind of have to step in, have a come to Jesus moment. And I think if it's at that point, obviously everyone's going to be understanding and get it. And so I think it's just controlling the event timeline and set up how as best as we can, to encourage the behavior that needs to happen.
Yeah, I guess the drinking thing is probably a similar idea, right? Where obviously you guys, I mean, does anyone else agree with that, or in terms of just, there's some social norms, right? You need to just assume that people are kind of following the guidelines.
I mean, there's a huge difference between giving someone a quick hug and coughing in their face. And I think based on what I've been seeing, the research that's been done, while it can spread through the air, it's more likely that you're going to pick it up by touching something that someone touch your face, that sort of thing. It's definitely a tricky line, and figuring out exactly where I want to draw that line, where I feel comfortable both from like a business and a public safety perspective is definitely a challenge.
Kellie, you had mentioned on the little our pre whatever document that you wanted to talk about kind of postponements now, or not postponements, cancellations now with since we've kind of gotten past the COVID thing and the idea that maybe people are budget conscious now, or we just had, I was telling you guys before we recorded, we just had a wedding for next August already canceled because whether they wanted to deal with it or if it was a budgetary issue or whatever. So you guys still have you had more calls like that? Obviously, Kellie coming in, and anyone else about canceling now because of those sorts of things? Kellie?
Oh, I mean, sorry. I thought you were asking if anyone else has. My bad.
Your question.
I feel like just a wave of people who are now like, we just, budget just isn't, we had budgeted for, a certain amount of income. We've lost our job, or, we just never had thought that we could do a smaller wedding. Now we're considering that because we're seeing it more. I mean, we're definitely getting kind of like, that's the next wave of like COVID issues that we're dealing with. And I think like we talked before, it's just really that balance between, being empathetic and feeling for your couples and your clients, but also like, thinking about the business and protecting the business. And that is a really tough balance. And I don't think there really is balance in that, but I think that's the whole navigating this has been the biggest struggle. It's like, my heart goes out to all our couples. And it's like, I dread picking up the phone and having conversations because like, it's not going to be fun and it's difficult and it's on both ends. And, but also knowing like, this is a business and we can't just give away, all of 2021 for free and just still, it's a struggle, but it's hard to explain that to someone who, as like a person, you dream of your wedding day your whole life. And then finally, you've met the person of your dreams, you're planning your wedding, and then that just gets shut down. It's like, why me? Why? And so like trying to even reason there, like you're not going to reason with them and be like, sorry, it's a business. Like you're just going to kind of add fuel to the fire. And it's just every conversation, every wave of new situations. It's just, how do I find that balance? What's going to be our business decision? And really just believing in, the decision that you've made, standing by your decision, and really just talking through it is kind of our approach. But it's a daily, I struggle with it daily. Like it's awful, but you got to do it.
Yeah, I guess maybe a better question for everyone else is, how are you balancing that, having to have those conversations about, moving, to a Saturday next summer, or like, I think one of you had said earlier, canceling when it was outside of, the window. I think Rebecca, you had said, a September wedding where, we don't know if, what's going to happen. How have you guys been having those conversations, for, things that weren't like in March when, okay, we physically can't have your wedding right now. And maybe Kimi, we can start with you.
Yeah. My husband and I run the venue together. So we had sat down early on during the stay-at-home order and kind of put together a guideline of like, if your wedding falls here, here's your options. If you're here, here's your options. And kind of addressed it month by month, depending on what was coming up, and kind of followed along with the new rules and regulations. And at the beginning, there was a lot of conversation with brides in August and September, and just trying to help them like, hey, let's all take it one day at a time because we don't know how it's going to turn out. But should we get to a point where maybe you need to postpone, like, let's talk about it at this time. But it's been so uncertain the whole time that it's been hard to give a direct answer, which is not fun. And it's not fun for them to hear. And it's stressful for us because it's just an awkward situation to be in and nobody wants to be in it. So the conversations have been very hard. But we put the policy in place early on just so that we had like a baseline of how we were going to handle things. And that had helped a lot. So it's just a lot of phone calls and listening to this different situations and kind of talking through various scenarios with each couple, and then just trying to follow along with our policy.
And what about you, Briana? You guys, I think the Zoom flip-flopped you guys in the picture. Briana, how have you guys been handling that?
Yeah, it's again been a huge learning curve. When we bought it end of December, we really only booked 5 weddings for 2020, and so now I've booked a lot of micro weddings, but I think one of my big weddings canceled and all the rest of them rescheduled to 2021. No, all but one. So it's just been interesting for me. I feel like I barely know what I'm doing in the first place, and then COVID hits and we're all like, whoa, okay. So I can't really say I have a good answer for you there, to be perfectly honest.
That's okay. What about you, Rebecca?
Yeah. So, I kind of want to back it up. When this all first happened, I think that we do a lot of weddings. We do 75 weddings a year, small and large. And so when it first happened, we got ahead of it right away, and we said, we understand that nobody knows what the outcome outcome is going to be. We're all in the same situation. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, please feel free to postpone to a mutually agreeable date. If it's related to COVID-19, we'll apply your deposit. If you're canceling before we actually know whether or not we're going to be able to have your wedding, your deposit's not refundable. But if we get to a point where we can't have your wedding, of course, your deposit's refundable. Fast forward to now that we can have weddings. Moving forward, I think that, of course, if family members are still, at risk and not feeling comfortable, feel free to postpone. We're still going to honor that. But we, like Kimi and Kellie said, we have to protect our business. And so, the contract still applies. And if if you're thinking, well, I just want to cancel now because of a financial situation or whatever the case may be, that's really not covered in the contract. So we try to be as flexible as we can while still maintaining the integrity of our business. And the thing about weddings versus other events is a lot of planning goes into this up front, especially on the venue side. And our time is a valuable resource, and we have to be compensated for that. So I just hope that we get a little grace in that way, because we certainly we go out of our way to help our couples to have the event that they want. And so a lot goes into and up to that point. And so a lot of times just refunding deposits isn't necessarily possible if it's outside of the terms of the contract.
Yeah, because I know that we're allowed to now, with certain regulations, but I still do fear, like you guys said, just because we can have weddings doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is going to want to come to a wedding. And I do think that some couples are still going to find that out. I don't know if that's going to be easy or hard, right? But just because you legally can have 100 people doesn't, I don't know if I would. We don't we have a wedding this weekend. I think it's 20 people or whatever. But I don't know if I would be comfortable being in a 100-person wedding right now. I don't know, right? I mean, we're obviously blessed that we're not, compromised or anything else. So many people are, and where they have to have their own, they really can't get sick or whatever. But it is challenging because I do think that just because you can't have a wedding coming up doesn't necessarily mean. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that?
And I think people choose not to attend weddings for all different reasons, but I think especially now in COVID, I think as a couple, obviously you want to get married, but I think you just got to learn to adapt. My cousin recently got married himself, and his now wife's family, they hurried things up just for some personal health reasons. And my uncle planned a really cool live stream Zoom wedding, and it was in New York, and the church live streamed the Catholic service with 5 people there, and then all of us hopped in Zoom, and the newlyweds, we did a grand entrance for them, and we had this website that we had different activities on, and just adapting. And still at the end of the day, it's about marrying your significant other and celebrating with people that you care about. And so whether you want to do it in person right now with 100 people, or you still want to do it and you want to have that first dance, you want to celebrate with those that can, but still trying to live stream or adapt, or how do you include others? I think just trying to navigate it and include everyone you can, or I don't know, just looking at it and just understanding that you can adapt and change, and you don't have to be, weddings aren't traditional anymore. So make your own tradition right now, your COVID tradition.
That's an excellent plug for our live streaming videography services. Thanks, Kellie.
There we go. Yeah. Check out Reed for live streaming.
That is, we actually just booked one, and there's a company out of Denver that is really facilitating that is facilitating the Zoom. They'll coordinate that and bring everybody in and MC it and do whatever else. And then then they'll hire videographers on site to, film the whatever. But it's actually, I wish I was smart enough to think of that, but it is, but if it works the way, obviously we haven't, worked with them yet, but if it works the way that they say, it is actually a really nice, thing where it's not just, it is a Zoom, chat, but it seems like it's a more elevated Zoom chat with, an actual MC and a schedule of events than just
we did it. And then we all we did toast, and we did the YMCA, like, so everyone's dancing in their living rooms. And it was just, it was an experience. And I think just being on the wedding side, it was like just enough of wedding to like make me like, I was like, I needed this, but it was definitely a fun experience to be a part of that. And be in a wedding setting. I mean, I was in yoga pants sitting on my bed, but it was, drinking my mimosa, but it was fun.
Kimi, what do you think of the new normal here? We're kind of rounding out this conversation for today.
Well, I definitely love it when I hear people thinking outside the box. We had even been approached to do basically a drive-in wedding. And unfortunately, we weren't far long enough in the phases to feel comfortable to host that. But just the couple's attitude was so wonderful as far as like, you know what, we really want to get married. We still want our date. We still want our friends and family. How can we make it happen? So we had their ceremony planned to be up in our haymow, which is the upper portion of our barn, and then all the cars in the parking lot facing them. And then we were going to do a parade on the property and like hand out box dinners, and then go do a big field sit down dinner, just everybody sitting like in the trunks of their cars. So this couple was just really great on planning something out of the box and making the best of it, and smiling and laughing and joking about all the different plans that they had. So it's fun. It's fun when you can find couples that are willing and able to think in those ways. Yeah.
Briana, what about you?
I kind of try to think of it as like, what's it called when the disco where everyone has headphones dancing different music? Silent disco? Yeah. I'm like, how can we turn this into something fun? Like the live stream thing, it can still be fun. It might not be the wedding you envisioned, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have a great time and your guests aren't going to have a great time. So, I mean, especially with people who are immunocompromised or older who, even if we have a vaccine next year, they might not feel comfortable coming because it's not going to be a great outcome. We can still do those kinds of things to make it a really fun, fantastic wedding where you feel loved and supported. And again, the most important thing is to marry the person you're in love with. And the other stuff is really, a benefit of having a wedding, but isn't necessarily the most important thing.
And Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, I think they all sort of touched on it. We are blessed that we're right on the water. So there's a lot of other things that you can do rather than dancing. There's all kinds of entertainment and people can space out. So I think the new norm is just a sign of the times. And I've already seen people making masks and PPE part of their fashion statements. So if it's a sign of the times, that's the way it is. I mean, if you look back at weddings in 1980, like the wedding dresses had these huge puffy sleeves. I mean, things were different. And I think it's just looking back on your photos and videos from what the times were and what was going on during that time is a piece of history. And I think there's something nostalgic about being able to create memories no matter what the environment and circumstances are. And people in nature just want to celebrate. We're human. There's a connection there, whether it's physical or not. We celebrate each other, and I don't think that that'll ever change. At the true heart of what we do, people are going to find ways to celebrate. And so I don't think that part's going to change.
I think that's a wonderful sentiment. And as someone that when we do the weekly Zoom trivia, Dorothy and I do. And I remember, I mean, this was like, 3 months ago now, but like the first time we sat down to do the Zoom trivia, I thought this is the dumbest thing ever. Like, I can't believe we had like our beer and we're sitting in the dining room. But now, but we do it every week. Right. And it's about, just, I think, like you said, trying new things and thinking outside the box. And I definitely think that you guys brought some good ideas and things like that too. And certainly lots of different great venues and options and, people to work with to kind of figure all that out. So thank you guys so much today for taking time and working through, rescheduling and tech issues and stuff. We got it all going. Let's do one more, just go around. Any last thoughts, any last, anything else you want to say? Rebecca, we'll start with you and go around.
And we're just grateful for all of our couples who've been really patient with us through all of this and on all of our guests in general. We're all in this together and we're all learning as we go. And things have been sort of thrown at us at a weekly basis. Things have changed and been very dynamic throughout the pandemic. And so we're just grateful for everyone who's held together and stuck with us and been patient. And I'm grateful for the grace that we've received during all of this. So thank you. And we're looking forward to celebrating with everyone next month.
And Briana?
Yeah, just if you're a couple who's facing all these challenges right now, just hang in there. Again, the most important thing is you getting married to the person you love. Everything else is secondary. It might not be the wedding you envisioned, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, we can all adapt and we can all change, and that's just part of life.
And Kimi?
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think they put it together very well. Yeah, we're definitely excited to be getting weddings going again at the farm, and just looking forward to seeing the different ideas that people come up with and doing what we can to help support that. And yeah, we're just excited. And thanks, Reed, for having me on, and everyone else. It's great to visit with all of you.
Kellie, this is a big take home.
Gosh, I know. I mean, I think it's just nice to sit here and talk to other people and understand that, like, all, kind of validate feelings and frustrations. And it's nice to know on the vendor side that we're all going through this together. And then on the couple side, like everyone said, just a huge appreciation to couples for, being patient, hanging on there, holding on to their date and having faith that was going to happen, and then trying to, adapt when they can. And I think to all those couples out there who are planning and just navigating COVID, I think, my big advice is just have faith in your vendor team. We're all, anxious to celebrate, get back to the new norm, and we're going to do what we can, to make your event as safe and fun as possible. And so just relying on the team you have is going to be a huge part of your day. And we're all just itching to get back into a wedding setting. And, I don't care if I hear the same playlist every weekend for the rest of the year. I will take it. I'm ready. So, yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much again. This has been another episode of Best Made Weddings, and we have some really good conversations coming up. Like I said, a DJ roundtable coming up, talking about kind of reception ideas and different sorts of non-touchy dancing entertainment that we can do at weddings. And I'm excited to see what the panel comes up with, because luckily I don't have to think of those things. We can just ask them and see what they say. So I'll put all your guys' information and truly wonderful venues, everybody. And I so appreciate you were all my first choices to ask, and I'm so glad everyone said yes and has continued my streak of having everyone I want be a part of this. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you.